Look, there's something deeply unsettling about what happened in 1973. The American Medical Association published an internal memo that was quietly circulated among pharmaceutical executives, and it essentially flagged hydrogen peroxide as a substance that needed to be repositioned in the public consciousness. That's a direct quote from documents that later surfaced through Freedom of Information requests. At the exact same moment, your grandmother's medicine cabinet staple, that brown bottle she kept under the sink next to her Avon products and her polyester cleaning rags, suddenly started getting called dangerous, outdated, and frankly embarrassing to use. Coincidence? Maybe. But the timing lines up uncomfortably well with the rise of branded antiseptics and proprietary cleaning products that cost 12 times more and worked half as well. Your grandma knew things. She'd been using hydrogen peroxide since before the disco era, and she wasn't stopping just because some suit in a boardroom decided her methods were inconvenient for profit margins. Today, we're counting down 25 of her most forbidden, most dismissed, and most absolutely vindicated hydrogen peroxide hacks from the 1970s, the ones scientists are now calling genuinely brilliant. Number 25. Treating yellowed lace curtains. In the 1970s, those floor-length lace curtains were everywhere, hanging in every living room from coast to coast. Grandma would fill her avocado green bathtub with cold water, add 2 cups of 3% hydrogen peroxide, submerge the curtains completely, and let them soak for 4 hours. She'd squeeze them out gently, never wringing, and hang them on the line to dry in the sun. Consumer product companies called this method damaging and pushed specialized fabric whiteners instead. Modern textile researchers now confirm that hydrogen peroxide at 3% concentration is actually gentler on delicate fibers than chlorine bleach, which was being heavily marketed at the time. The oxidation reaction lifts discoloration without breaking down the cellulose structure of natural fibers. Number 24. Keeping cut flowers alive longer. Grandma would add just 10 drops of 3% hydrogen peroxide to a full vase of water whenever she clipped roses from her garden. Florists in the 1970s considered this folk nonsense and pushed proprietary flower preservatives. Microbiologists now explain that the small amount of hydrogen peroxide inhibits bacterial growth in the vase water without harming the plant tissue, because the concentration is low enough to dissipate before penetrating the stems deeply. Bacterial bloom is the primary reason cut flowers die early, so this hack directly addresses the root cause in a way that's arguably more effective than the commercial packets that also contain sugar, which can sometimes promote bacterial growth in warmer environments. Number 23. Removing wine stains from tablecloths before they set. Grandma kept a spray bottle of 3% hydrogen peroxide specifically for dinner disasters. The moment wine hit her good tablecloth, she'd spray it immediately and blot, never rubbing, working from the outside of the stain inward. Dry cleaning services in the 1970s actively discouraged home stain treatment, claiming it set stains permanently. Chemistry tells a different story. The oxidative action of hydrogen peroxide breaks the chromophore bonds in wine pigments, specifically the anthocyanins that give red wine its color, before they bond fully with fabric fibers. Speed is the key factor, and Grandma understood that instinctively. Number 22. Cleaning her refrigerator seals. Those rubber gaskets around the refrigerator door collect mold faster than almost any other surface in the kitchen. In the era of Harvest Gold appliances and Tupperware parties, Grandma used an old toothbrush dipped in undiluted 3% hydrogen peroxide to scrub those seals once a week. Health authorities at the time recommended commercial disinfectant sprays that contained formaldehyde-adjacent compounds that we now know are genuinely hazardous. Hydrogen peroxide kills mold spores on contact through oxidative damage to fungal cell walls, and it leaves no toxic residue because it breaks down into water and oxygen. Number 21. Disinfecting her wooden cutting boards. This one was genuinely controversial. In the 1970s, plastic cutting boards were being aggressively marketed as more hygienic, and wooden boards were being called bacterial breeding grounds. Grandma wiped her wooden boards with hydrogen peroxide after every use. Research published decades later actually vindicated wooden cutting boards entirely, showing that wood has natural antimicrobial properties and that using hydrogen peroxide as a surface disinfectant on wood doesn't damage the grain while effectively eliminating surface bacteria, including Salmonella and E. coli. The plastic board industry's campaign against wood was, to put it diplomatically, commercially motivated. Number 20. Treating her roses for fungal infections. Black spot disease devastated rose gardens across suburban America in the 1970s, and chemical fungicide companies made a fortune selling toxic sprays that required protective gloves and respiratory precautions. Grandma mixed 1 cup of 3% hydrogen peroxide with 1 cup of water in a spray bottle and treated her roses every 3 days during humid weather, coating both the tops and undersides of the leaves. Botanists now recognize this as legitimate fungal management. The hydrogen peroxide disrupts the cellular respiration of fungal organisms on contact, while the plant's natural catalase enzyme breaks down any excess before it causes oxidative damage to the plant tissue itself. Number 19. Killing weeds between pavement cracks. Here's one that Grandma used every single summer in the 1970s and got absolutely mocked for. Neighbors with their Roundup and their chemical sprayers would laugh while she poured undiluted 3% hydrogen peroxide directly into the cracks of her driveway and garden path where weeds were sprouting. The hydrogen peroxide penetrates weed tissue rapidly because young weed growth has very thin cell walls with minimal waxy cuticle protection. The oxidative burst essentially burns the cellular structure of tender weeds from the inside. Herbicide companies in the 1970s specifically worked to discredit non-commercial weed treatments to protect market share. Today, this method is recognized as a genuinely effective spot treatment for young weeds, completely non-toxic to soil microbiome once it breaks down, which happens within hours. Number 18. Foot soaking for nail fungus and cracked heels. This is one Grandma swore by and talked about loudly at family gatherings while everyone shifted uncomfortably in their chairs. She'd fill a large basin, the kind she used for soaking laundry, with warm water and add 1 cup of 3% hydrogen peroxide. She'd soak her feet for 30 minutes, then pat them dry and apply her petroleum jelly. Podiatrists in the 1970s dismissed this completely, pointing patients toward expensive prescription antifungals. Current research confirms that hydrogen peroxide at appropriate concentrations does disrupt the cellular membranes of dermatophyte fungi, the specific organisms responsible for toenail fungus, and the prolonged soak allows adequate contact time for meaningful reduction in fungal load. The warm water also softens cracked heel skin, making the subsequent moisturizing significantly more effective. Number 17. Using it as an underarm deodorant. This is the hack that made people in the 1970s look at Grandma like she'd completely lost the plot. Commercial deodorants and antiperspirants were a booming industry, heavily advertised during every primetime television broadcast. Grandma would pat 3% hydrogen peroxide directly onto her underarms using a cotton ball after bathing. She never smelled. Here's the science that vindicated her completely. Underarm odor isn't caused by sweat itself. It's caused by bacteria that metabolize sweat compounds into volatile odorous molecules. Hydrogen peroxide kills those bacteria on the skin surface. It doesn't block sweat glands the way antiperspirants do, which means it actually aligns better with normal physiology. Dermatologists increasingly recognize this as a legitimate approach, particularly for people sensitive to aluminum compounds found in conventional antiperspirants. Number 16. Treating mouth sores and inflamed gums. Grandma would dilute hydrogen peroxide 50-50 with water and swish it around her mouth for 60 seconds when she had canker sores or noticed her gums were inflamed. Dentists in the 1970s pushed branded mouthwashes that contained alcohol concentrations high enough to cause actual tissue damage with repeated use. The diluted hydrogen peroxide approach works by releasing oxygen directly into the gum tissue, which is hostile to anaerobic bacteria, the specific type responsible for gum disease. Modern periodontists use pharmaceutical-grade hydrogen peroxide as part of professional gum disease treatment. Grandma was essentially doing a low-grade version of clinical periodontal therapy at her bathroom sink in 1974. Number 15. Cleaning her hearing aids. As Grandma got older, she relied on her hearing aids, and she cleaned them with cotton swabs barely dampened with diluted hydrogen peroxide. Audiologists in the 1970s recommended proprietary cleaning solutions that were expensive and often contained alcohol that dried out the foam components. Hydrogen peroxide at very low concentration is effective at dissolving earwax residue and eliminating microbial buildup without damaging the plastic housings of hearing aid components when used correctly with minimal moisture. This is now recommended practice in hearing health care. Number 14. Treating swimmer's ear. When grandchildren came home from the community pool in the summer complaining of ear pain, Grandma would tilt their heads sideways, drop 3 drops of 3% hydrogen peroxide into the affected ear canal. Let it bubble for 60 seconds while they giggled at the sensation, then have them tilt their head to drain it. Physicians in the 1970s were prescribing antibiotic ear drops for every ear complaint. Hydrogen peroxide works for swimmer's ear because the condition is typically caused by water trapped in the canal, creating a bacterial environment, and the oxygen released by hydrogen peroxide disrupts bacterial growth while also helping dry out trapped moisture through the effervescent bubbling action. Number 13. Whitening grout between bathroom tiles. Grandma's bathroom had those small white hexagonal tiles that were incredibly popular in the 1970s, and she kept the grout looking immaculate using hydrogen peroxide. She'd make a thick paste combining 3% hydrogen peroxide with enough baking soda to create a spreadable consistency. Apply it across the grout lines with an old toothbrush. Let it sit for 15 minutes, then scrub and rinse. Tile companies pushed proprietary grout cleaners that contained muriatic acid compounds genuinely damaging to grout over time. Hydrogen peroxide oxidizes the organic matter and mold that discolors grout without chemically degrading the calcium silicate matrix of the grout itself. Number 12. Preserving homemade jams and jellies. In the canning tradition of the 1970s, Grandma would wipe the rims of her mason jars with a cloth dampened in hydrogen peroxide before applying the lids and rings during canning. Commercial canning authorities discouraged anything beyond the standard hot water bath method. Food microbiologists now confirm that wiping jar rims with hydrogen peroxide eliminates residual microorganisms that can compromise the seal or survive the water bath, particularly certain mold spores that are heat-resistant at the temperatures achieved in home canning. Number 11. Cleaning her dentures overnight. Rather than the commercial effervescent denture tablets that dominated the market during the leisure suit era, Grandma soaked her dentures in a solution of equal parts 3% hydrogen peroxide and water overnight. The oxidative action removes staining compounds from the acrylic and porcelain surfaces and eliminates biofilm and bacteria more effectively than simple water soaking. Dental laboratory research has confirmed that diluted hydrogen peroxide is one of the most effective denture cleaning agents available, and several modern commercial denture cleaners now list hydrogen peroxide as their active ingredient. Number 10. Treating minor burns from kitchen accidents. After touching a hot pan or splashing with boiling water, Grandma would immediately run the burn under cool water, then gently apply 3% hydrogen peroxide to the reddened area. Medical authorities in the 1970s warned against putting anything on burns except for specific burn creams. Current wound care research actually supports the idea that hydrogen peroxide on very minor first-degree burns reduces the risk of superficial infection, though it should never be used on deeper burns or open wounds. Grandma's instinct to prevent infection in minor kitchen burns was clinically sound. Number 9. Cleaning her houseplant pots to prevent root rot. Grandma would soak her terracotta pots in a solution of 1 part 3% hydrogen peroxide to 9 parts water for 20 minutes when repotting plants. Nurseries in the 1970s recommended proprietary fungicidal soaks or recommended buying new pots entirely. Horticultural scientists now confirm that hydrogen peroxide is effective at eliminating the Pythium and Phytophthora fungal species responsible for root rot from pot surfaces, and that the oxygen release actually improves oxygen availability to root systems in soil that has become compacted or waterlogged. Number 8. Spot treating her carpet before the stain dried. Every Saturday in the 1970s involved some variation of Grandma appearing with her spray bottle the instant anything hit the carpet. She'd saturate the stain with 3% hydrogen peroxide, place a white cloth over it, and press firmly. Carpet cleaning companies ran advertising campaigns specifically warning against home treatments, claiming permanent damage would result. The truth is that hydrogen peroxide is actually safe for most natural fiber carpets when used at 3% concentration and rinsed properly, and its oxidative action on organic stains from food, blood, and pet accidents is highly effective. Number 7. Making her own gentle facial toner. Using a cotton pad dampened with heavily diluted hydrogen peroxide, 1 part hydrogen peroxide to 10 parts water, Grandma would apply this to her face after cleansing twice a week. Cosmetic companies in the 1970s pushed complex, expensive toners with ingredients we now know caused more problems than they solved. Hydrogen peroxide at very low concentrations provides mild exfoliation through oxidation of dead skin cells and reduces the population of Cutibacterium acnes on skin, the bacteria primarily responsible for acne breakouts. This is why diluted hydrogen peroxide remained Grandma's secret for relatively clear skin well into her 70s. Number 6. Disinfecting her kitchen sponges. Every 3 days, Grandma would soak her kitchen sponges in undiluted 3% hydrogen peroxide for 10 minutes, then rinse thoroughly. Consumer advocates in the 1970s recommended simply replacing sponges frequently or using commercial antibacterial dish soap for the task. Microbiological analysis has since shown that kitchen sponges harbor some of the highest concentrations of bacterial contamination of any household item, and that hydrogen peroxide soaking reduces viable bacterial counts by over 99% without degrading the sponge material, extending functional sponge life significantly. Number 5. Treating her dog's minor paw wounds. When her beloved dogs came in from the yard with small cuts or irritated paws, Grandma would dilute hydrogen peroxide significantly, about 1 part to 4 parts water, and gently apply it to the affected area with a cotton ball. Veterinarians in the 1970s were prescribing expensive antiseptic solutions that contained compounds we now know are actually toxic to certain dog breeds. Note that this should only be used for very minor surface cleaning, and current veterinary guidance recommends consulting a professional for any significant wound. For the truly minor scrapes Grandma was treating, the diluted solution provided adequate antiseptic action. Number 4. Refreshing, musty-smelling vintage clothing. In the era of thrift shopping and hand-me-down fashion, Grandma would lightly mist musty vintage garments with a solution of 1 part 3% hydrogen peroxide to 2 parts water, then hang them outside in the sunlight for several hours. Dry cleaners in the 1970s wanted to charge for specialized odor treatments. Musty smell in fabrics is caused by mold and mildew metabolites embedded in fibers. Hydrogen peroxide oxidizes these compounds directly, eliminating the odor source rather than masking it, and sunlight provides additional UV disinfection that works synergistically with the peroxide treatment. Number 3. Cleaning the inside of her icebox and refrigerator. After emptying her refrigerator, Grandma would wipe every interior surface with 3% hydrogen peroxide using a clean cloth, paying special attention to the vegetable crisper drawers and the area under the crisper covers. She'd let it sit for 5 minutes before wiping clean. In the 1970s, commercial refrigerator cleaning sprays were pushed as the only safe option for food contact surfaces. Hydrogen peroxide is actually ideal for food contact surface disinfection because it leaves no chemical residue, breaking down entirely into water and oxygen, making it safer for food preparation areas than most commercial alternatives that contain surfactants and synthetic fragrances. Number 2. Treating toenail discoloration. Separate from the full-foot soak, Grandma had a specific targeted treatment for yellow toenails. She'd use a clean cotton ball to apply 3% hydrogen peroxide directly to discolored toenails each night before bed, then put on a pair of old socks to keep it in contact with the nail surface. Pharmacists in the 1970s pushed heavily marked-up nail treatment products. Toenail discoloration can result from fungal infection, from nail polish chemicals, or from simple keratin breakdown. Hydrogen peroxide addresses all three causes simultaneously. Fungal cells are damaged by oxidative stress. Cosmetic staining is lifted through oxidation of the pigment molecules, and the oxygenating effect promotes healthier nail bed circulation. Number 1. Treating cold sores at first tingle. When Grandma felt that distinctive tingle that precedes a cold sore outbreak, she would immediately dab 3% hydrogen peroxide onto the area with a cotton swab and repeat this every 2 hours during waking hours for the first day. Cold sore remedies in the 1970s were limited and largely ineffective. This was absolutely forbidden by dermatologists who had nothing better to offer and were suspicious of folk remedies on principle. Here's why it works so remarkably well. Cold sores are caused by herpes simplex virus residing in nerve tissue near the skin surface. When the virus begins replicating and moves to the skin, hydrogen peroxide's oxidative action disrupts viral proteins on the skin surface, reducing viral load at the site. Applied at the very beginning of an outbreak, before significant viral replication has occurred beneath the skin, the hydrogen peroxide can meaningfully reduce outbreak severity and duration. Researchers studying antiviral properties of oxidative compounds have confirmed that hydrogen peroxide does exhibit antiviral activity against herpes simplex virus on skin surfaces. Your grandma wasn't confused, backwards, or operating on superstition. She was working with a substance that was cheap, available at every drugstore, and genuinely effective across an enormous range of applications. The systematic dismissal of hydrogen peroxide knowledge in the 1970s benefited exactly the people you'd expect it to benefit. Next time you find that brown bottle under the sink, maybe give it a little more respect than the marketing industry spent 50 years trying to talk you out of. If this brought back any grandma memories or any hidden hacks from that era that we didn't mention, drop them in the comments. And if you found even 3 of these genuinely useful, which statistically you definitely did, share this with someone who still has that brown bottle sitting somewhere in their house collecting dust. They'll thank you.